Good morning, campers. This is Crusader Rabbit KBNY 5962 starting our broadcasting day. And today, for your viewer enjoyment, we're going to present for your approval the Contax G1 to test roll. So, just received the Contax G1 purchased in an auction on eBay. I got the camera body plus the 90 millimeter lens for $3.99. 90 millimeter lens was listed as being perfect, excellent, perfect. The body was listed as, like reasonably good shape, with the exception that the exposure counter is non-functional. And I can usually count to 24 or 36, so I didn't worry about it too much. So it's like, okay, sounds good to me. So, just to very quickly go through the features. On the top of the camera, we have the main LCD window, and we have two buttons on the side. One is for drive, and one is for ISO. The drive will cycle. Let me turn the camera on. This is the on button here. First click goes to on. The drive will cycle between single shot, continuous, timer, and multiple exposure, and then go back to single shot. The ISO button, when you depress that, you can select the ISO. And then once you have the ISO selected, you can go up or down. So I think if you press and hold it, it'll start to blink. And there's like an up button, and there's like a down button. So that's going down, and then it's going up. And then there's also a DX mode. Of course, it's empty right now, so it's not reading properly. And then to save the selection, you take and you turn the camera off, and then you turn it back on again, and it has the selection in there. And then also, it displays what mode you're in. And right now we're in AF automatic focus mode. If I was to depress the button here and move off of automatic focus mode, then you can see how it is displaying where I am focusing at. It doesn't actually move the lens at this time. That'll actually wait until you take the picture. This is the shutter button right here, and the on-off button. This is the and that locks it at the automatic focus slot. And then this is your shutter selector. There's basically, this camera can operate in aperture priority. So you can take your lens, you can set it to f/16, and then you can set this in auto. It'll go ahead and select whatever shutter range it thinks it's appropriate for f/16. And there's also exposure compensation in third of a steps from +2 to -2. And the whole range locks. You can't move out of the range without pressing the interior button. However, the auto does have it's heavierly detented than all of the rest. These are kind of like lighter click-throughs, and that's kind of like a heavier. You have to push a little harder to get it off of that. And then if you want to go to manual shutter, then you would depress this, and you can go to a manual shutter. And when you depress this, I don't know if I mentioned this, and then go to manual focus, your focus will not only does it display in here, but then it also displays in here. I don't usually look at that when I'm focusing. I only usually look at the interior lens, the interior viewfinder to see what range I'm at. But it's kind of a nice double check because your lens will go to a focus setting when you have to press the shutter button. And then it'll take the picture when you fully depress the shutter button. And it's kind of nice to be able to check to make sure that when you guesstimate how far you are from what you're trying to focus to, that it's registering that, yeah, that's the distance that I'm focusing at. And you'll see it in here. And then here it's a digital scale in the viewfinder. I don't know if you can see in the viewfinder. There is you can roll right now. It's you can see like the two dots, and it's measuring that it can't focus, but you can see the scale there where it's a scale between infinity and whatever. And if it was able to focus, it would pick on like whatever distance it's going to focus at, and it would display just one of those dots on that distance. So I think that's the top of the camera pretty much. We have the main display, we have the exposure counter, which doesn't work. We have the manual focus dial, and there's this auto focus setting, and then we also have, to get this off of manual shutter, you have to depress the button and then turn it to the automatic auto shutter, where it'll automatically pick the shutter based upon whatever you set for your aperture. So it's aperture priority. And that's the top of the camera. Let's see, back of the camera, there's like a data back. And I don't even have the battery in for that because I don't usually use the data back. There is a external electronic shutter control that allows you to trigger the shutter without depressing this shutter. For instance, if you're taking a timed exposure or shooting something on B. I was planning on doing something like that very soon when I was trying to take some shots of the Milky Way. Anyway, that's the top of the camera. Oh, and then there's the accessory shoe, hot shoe. And I don't have the flash for this. But there's for some other lenses, the view, depending on which lens you mount into the camera, the viewfinder will adjust for whatever lens. So this is a 28 millimeter lens, I believe, that I currently have in there. Yeah, 28 millimeter. And that will be like that'll be a wider view out of the viewfinder than if I put in the 90 millimeter. I'm going to put a test roll of exposures that I took with the 90 millimeter at the end of this little walk around the camera. I used the 90 millimeter because everybody complained about the 90 millimeter, saying it was really hard to get focus with the 90 millimeter, really hard to get focus with this camera. And I thought the camera did a really good job. I thought the focus was just balls on accurate, and I was really impressed with it. And I was really impressed with the camera. So I really don't know, maybe I have a better copy of the lens than a lot of people do, but I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. We've done the top. On the bottom, we have the battery compartment door. It takes 2 batteries of the CR2 flavor. I believe it's CR2. Anyway, they're like little finger-sized batteries. They just like plug right in there. And there's the tripod mount. And there is the this camera is auto loading and auto advance. There's, as you can see, there's no shutter cocking or film advance lever. So it's auto loading, auto advance, and auto rewind. However, you can manually kick off the rewind, the motorized rewind, by depressing this little button right here, if you care to. And as I'll mention in a bit, I definitely care to. So another thing you can do is on the settings over here, you can depress these two buttons at the same time. Oh, I have to turn the camera on. And you depress these two buttons for the same time. And then eventually it goes into like this setting mode. And there's 3 different presets that you can change the configuration of. So, oops. So what I like to do is I like to get it blinking, and I like to change it to the 3rd preset, and then you get like a 0-1 possibility on it. And if it's 3-0, it'll rewind the film all the way into the canister. If it's 3-1, it'll leave a little bit of leader out of the camera to allow you to grab that and trim and stuff, so that it'll fit easier on a developer roll if you're developing your own film. And I think yeah. So, and then to save, I think when it clicks off of there, it's saved, and then you can like click this to also save. And I can't remember what the other 2 values are right now, but the other 2 presets I leave exactly the way they are. Those are good for me, but because I develop my own film, I like to leave a little bit of leader out of the canister so that I can grab onto it and trim and stuff. This little tab right here kind of folds down. See, it sticks out of there kind of like at a 90-degree angle. It's kind of delicate. Just go in with a fingernail and pull it out. And then there's an arrow there that shows you which direction to turn it in. And you turn in that direction, and the back pops open. And to load the film, you simply put the canister in, stretch the film all the way over, kind of tuck it in there, and then close the back door. And when you do that, it automatically loads, and you can hear the motor automatically loading. I believe that's the flash sync right there. Diopter control for the viewfinder. And front of the camera, we have the release for the lens. Lens is a breech lock. There's like the motor drive. There's on the body here. There's kind of like a little flat head that fits into this screw, and that's what the motor drive. The motor drive for focusing is in the camera body, and then the little flat head that goes in here spins around and turns the gearing in the lens, allowing the lens to focus. And when you're putting the camera on the body, you want to make sure that you're putting, well, there are like little red dots to line up, but you want to make sure you do that because you want that little flathead to get into that. There are little red dots to line it up, but you want to make sure that the flathead gets in there. And then you don't actually rotate the lens. You keep the lens on the body, and then there's a breech lock here that you turn that locks the lens in place. Very similar to like what Canon, I think it's Canon that had the breech lock, right? And it seems kind of strange, but when the lens is off the body, the aperture, you can see that the aperture does fully work, but for instance, I'm at f16 right now, or f22, so this little mark here should be over the 22, but it's not. But when this is on the body, because you twist the lens to lock it into place, then those marks will line up when the lens is on the body. So if you're buying the lens separate, and it doesn't look like the little index mark and aperture values line up properly, it's because it's not, and if it's not on the body, it's because it's not on the body. So as you can see now, with this lens on the body, with this lens on the body, it lines up perfectly. f22, and then all the way down to f28. f28 wide open. And it's got a metal shutter, which is nice. No burning holes in your shutter. That's where you're looking through for the viewfinder. This is the automatic rangefinder part of the camera. Camera is a automatic rangefinder. You don't look through the lens, and you don't have a focusing patch that you line up for focus. It does that for you. You don't see it. And I believe those are the windows that it uses in order to triangulate that. When it has trouble, it's got like a little sensor over here where it shoots out a little beam and aids the focus. And that is the Contax G1. I don't know if there is. Would just like to say it's a really, really fun camera to shoot. I didn't know that I was going to have this much fun. I bought this camera with the 90mm on the body, and I had so much fun shooting it that I went out and I got the 28mm next. So my next trip out, I'll take the 28mm out, and we'll do a test roll with this lens. But for right now, I think I'm going to end this video. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. This is Crusader Rabbit. KBNY 5962, ending our broadcasting day. Good night, campers.